Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for those kind words, and good morning from the Rock to the rest of New York. Mayor, I want to start by reading a very difficult paragraph to hear, somewhat graphic, but speaks to the ground truth that's playing out across this country. So bear with me for 1 second. Small and large diabetic foot wounds rarely heal. They can look as though someone has taken an apple corer to the balls of both feet. The body doesn't have enough blood flow and cell regeneration capacity, and bacteria thrive in this meaty, moist environment. Right now, 40 million people, bedridden and waiting for death, are living this nightmare. There's almost nothing that can be done for them except to cut back the dead and dying tissue, then cut some more, and then some more. From there, robbed of upright mobility, misery is your bedfellow, and thankfully, death is near. In the United States alone, 82,000 elderly people have a limb amputated. That's 10 every hour. All this pain, all this cost comes from relatively minor initial injuries, foot wounds. And that's a powerful paragraph from a book called Lifespan by David Sinclair that I read a few years ago. Every time I read that, Mayor, I think of an article from 2009, the New York Times, Sam Roberts article about one of your predecessors, Ed Koch. 84-year-old Ed Koch was looking back on his life and looking ahead to the pending reality. And he had this line that stayed with me. He said, I had a conversation with God. Take me totally or don't take me. No salami tactics. And that stayed with me, Mayor, because as you know, of all the ailments my dad had, it was losing his right leg below the knee, ironically not from diabetes. That was the most devastating to him, way beyond the triple bypass and the chronic pulmonary disease. Pre-COVID, diabetes was the largest and most expensive epidemic in our lifetime. 30 million people in this country suffer from diabetes. There's tens of millions more who are quote-unquote pre-diabetic, which is a fancy way of saying they're on the path to becoming diabetic. We spend $51 billion on health coverage for type 2 diabetes, and it comes at an economic cost to this country of $404 billion. Last week, Reuters did a long story quoting the CDC and confirming that research showed that 40% or more of the people who died from COVID had diabetes. Last year, the phrase underlying conditions was bandied about. It seemed finally there was going to be some sense of urgency in this country. We were about to confront the reality that 4 or 5 generations into the standard American diet, we were going to do something about it. We have set up people as bowling pins, and the bowling ball was this virus. And it seemed as if there was a sense of urgency, and we were going to attack the underlying causes of chronic disease and attack chronic disease. Sadly, Mayor, I tweeted this out the other day, the most recognizable voice talking about underlying conditions is a comedian who has a weekly cable show on HBO. Half the country hates his politics. The other half hate how he's framing the issue, but he is the leading and loudest voice on it. Mayor, it wouldn't be one of our press conferences without a board. This, what might seem as gibberish to the uninitiated, explains our journey and our start on this diabetes center. We know about the Kroc Center. We know about its unfortunate demise. You said publicly what you said to me privately. You did a mea culpa on part of the administration, and you made a commitment for an indoor pool. That price tag ballooned to $100 million. We would have never built it for less than $250 million. And you and I made the decision, we call it the pivot, and we said there's a higher purpose for this money, and we laid out how we were going to spend it. One of the higher purposes of that original $100 million is the Diabetes Center. We had been working with the good folks at Northwell, SIUH. We had been working with New York City EDC. We identified a building on the grounds of Seaview, which is an H&H campus. We were making great progress. And then at the end, the numbers just did not work for SIUH. They were willing to lose money on it, but they couldn't lose that much money on it. And a great guy, you might have heard his name before, a guy by the name of Mitch Katz, said, Jimmy, I think we have an alternative. And he's the one who said, we have this beautiful, brand new building, essentially, at the Vanderbilt site. We can be up and running at that site before the end of your term, before the end of the mayor's term. And we're hoping to have services up and running by September, let's say October. Evidence shows that we can alter the costs with folks with diabetes, with exercise, a better diet, if they're overweight, losing weight, and medication. We can prevent Staten Islanders, New Yorkers, Americans from living the fate that David Sinclair wrote about. And last but not least, and I will close with this, the beautiful thing is the $24 million we had allocated to renovating the building on the Seaview campus is now freed up. And our friend Mitch Katz and some really good folks who work with him simultaneously had this other project in mind. And so we will have a great announcement at another time, but on that Seaview campus, as we are moving Diabetes Center to Vanderbilt, on that Seaview campus, we will have a pediatric hospital run by H&H that will give care to 80 to 100 children a year who otherwise would have to go to Yonkers or outside of New York. So this week is a story of perseverance and better outcomes in time. I was angry and frustrated with all the fits and starts, but we are closing actually with the best outcomes available where I think we're going to impact the most lives. And obviously, Mr. Mayor, I'm grateful to you. I'm grateful to Mitch. You know, I've come to respect Mitch Katz a tremendous amount. He is everything that we want in public servants. He cares, and they're creative, and his folks are creative, and we're going to have some wonderful institutions in this borough that are going to help Staten Islanders in their most critical time of need.
Beautifully, beautifully laid out, Jim.